Eric, welcome to a Black Forum, man. How you doing?
Jerome, I appreciate it, man. I'm doing well.
Man, it's good to have you on here, man. It's good to talk.
Likewise, man.
Yeah, man. I've been really people one been asking if I was gonna have you on here. This was like a couple Steve Vinnick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve had asked me what I was gonna
That's
have
interesting.
you on. Yeah, this was on his because he had told me y'all had worked the campaign or something.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
A while back.
Yeah.
And he thought you would be interesting to have on here. And this was on his birthday, so this was maybe a little like a month ago.
Yeah.
But then like just from your Facebook posts and stuff like over the last year and stuff, I was like, man, I gotta get Eric on here, man, to talk about what's going on and get him to talk about it even deeper on Deep Dish Conversations, man. So thank you for being available to do this.
Thank you for the invite, man. I appreciate it.
Man, let's just start off a little introductory stuff, man. Just for people who may not know who you are, and your ties here to North Nashville.
Yeah.
And just Nashville in general.
Yeah, man. So I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. Lived in Murfreesboro for my high school years. Went to college for a second outside the city, and then came back around 2004. So I guess my background is my parents came. My father's from Cleveland, Ohio. My mother's from Lebanon, Tennessee. They met at the American Baptist College, the Holy Hill. I was actually born on the Holy Hill at first, and so really my connection to North Nashville was my church at the time, which is Jefferson Street Missionary Baptist Church, Reverend James Tex Thomas. And North Nashville was just always a different vibe for me, at least, just to see so many black folks everywhere. I grew up in Woodbine. And Woodbine is way different now than it was then.
Right.
But Woodbine was very diverse area. So you had black, white, folks from Africa, Laotians, the immigrant population in general. So it's just very diverse.
Right.
And then the only problem is when I went to school, majority white, you felt like maybe the only black person in the class. And then I got to middle school at Wright, and Wright was a whole different beast at that time. And then it was just always about North Nashville. Just made me feel very proud to be black, to see black business owners, see black activists, college students. It felt like a different world.
Right.
Literally the TV show, A Different World for me. So it was like you could be in whatever facet of blackness it is, but it's still black and we love it.
Right.
So my background from that is I actually, for a little while, went down the same road as my parents. So I was in ministry for about 15 years, which was kind of weird for me. Where it really hit was actually September 9/11, was really where it actually hit when New York got hit like that. Those towers fell. It became a theological question for me. People were saying things like, "This is only happening because God is punishing New York for the faith of Islam and for those who are same gender loving," and that never really made sense to me in my head. And then around that same time, I started feeling the call, which is really different when you're like 18 years old. I barely know that I'm a man. I barely am really interested in a lot of things, and I'm going into this adulthood, and at the same time I'm trying to figure out adulthood. Now I get hit with, oh, you're about to be a preacher, and preachers have to think this way, preachers have to be this, preachers have to be in this box, and I never fit in that box. And so I always felt really uncomfortable in the faith world, but at the same time I knew that there was some type of connection, so I got really quiet. I was really insecure, which also helped me to be a good listener.
Right.
And so because of that, I became, a lot of people became very comfortable with me. And so people started telling me stories about themselves where they knew I was going to be a lock volt. Right. So I would hear people that had coming out stories, but they never told nobody. They told me. Or people that would tell me about, certain instances of violence that happened in their life. I was the first person they told. And so it gave me a very different perspective about what listening looks like.
Right.
And that transferred over and helped me to be more okay with faith because of my pastor, Reverend Tex Thomas.
Right.
And because of him being himself in his fashioned way, helped me to be better about my identity and what that meant within faith. But at the same time with faith, which bothered me was I see a church on every corner, but I'm seeing dilapidated buildings. I'm seeing condemned buildings. I'm seeing drug-infested neighborhoods. Homelessness, forms of violence that was happening. But, you're telling me to go to church, believe in the power of Jesus, while at the same time seeing the contradiction of the death and the harm that's going on in my community.
Right.
So that led me into community organizing.
Yep.
And so I became a community organizer through a group called Center for Community Change out of D.C., which is where I had my connection with Generation Change, which really trained us young folks at that time to be community organizers. And so I worked with two different groups, Gamelia Foundation and then also IAF. Right. And from there, I was a part of a group called TNT, Tying Nashville Together, which was the predecessor of NOAH.
Right.
And that work took me into, I can go different ways with this, but it took me within college to really think about activism more. And a situation happened in Gino, Louisiana that really bothered me. It just wasn't the way I thought community organizing would be. And I said, you know what, screw this, I'm leaving this, I'm gonna go to grad school. I'm gonna try to become a professor, get a PhD. And so I went down the Vanderbilt route, but justice would not let me go. And so from there, I ended up taking a job. Once I graduated, I realized that a PhD route was not the way to go for me. The market was bad. And at the same time, I still had more execution to do instead of more theoretical writing.
Right.
And so I met who I consider my second mom, but is also my biggest mentor in community organizing, Dr. Janet Wolf. And she told me about that she just got hired on to Children's Defense Fund. Now, she was my teacher at ABC,
right.
But she ends up being my boss for Children's Defense Fund. And so now I start thinking about the Creative Prison Pipeline. I start thinking about how faith and theology works well with the prison pipeline system. What does that actually mean to be followers of God or followers of Jesus or followers of whatever that means? But at the same time, how do we make sure that justice is felt and done?
Right.
But there was something still missing in community organizing for me, and that was how do we still change policy? And so that took me to the world of politics.
Right.
And so I ended up going down that route. At the same time, I thought I was going to be a pastor of the church that I told you about. That actually did not happen. I lost my purpose. I did not know what I was going to do. And a good friend, Alfred DeGraff Reed, told me about a campaign that was happening for somebody running for U.S. Senate. Got on that campaign, became statewide political director, and then politics started becoming my world. And then politics kind of transitioned into climate change and environmental rights and environmental racism.
Right.
And then that took me to Memphis. And then I just knew that I needed to come back to Nashville, come back to North Nashville, and got involved in the mayor's office. And the whole time for me being in the mayor's office was, how do I make sure to make North Nashville have a better quality of life? Right. And that was my overall piece, and that's kind of where I'm at. It's a hodgepodge of different experiences that got me to this experience now.
Yeah, no, that's one. I'm pretty sure everybody didn't know that, all those things. But two, you bring up I think a lot of courageousness has happened in your journey, like to go into something thinking like, hey, this is for me, and say, this is not for me. Or even unintentional or intentional influences to go a certain path, right? I think many of us face, some of us, get trapped in that, get boxed in like, my parents or my family has done this, so like, I got to go this. Even though I don't really want to do it, I have to because I don't want to let them down. Yeah. It seemed like you was able to just kind of break through all of that and figure out, learn more about yourself, do the reflecting, and just be true to who you are in all of those spaces. And I have to ask you, man, because as black men that kind of do the work or have went the paths we have went similarly, we tend to be the only ones, right? Or one of many, many few, right? How has it been navigating all of those spaces, being black and being a black man? And what was some of the things you think you may have benefited from, or some of the things like, hey, like it was a struggle to deal with? That's
a great question, Jerome. I think it was probably grad school that got me to the point to say that blackness can be anything where black people are at. Mm-hmm. I think before that, I thought that there was always limits to what can be black and what could not be black. Right. So in elementary school, I kind of felt from the white kids that I was too black, but and everybody says this experience, and from the black folks, I felt like I was not black enough. And so I kind of went down that road. I love sports. I was a musician. I was trying to produce music. I was doing choreography, hip hop, dance. I did a lot of that stuff, even though I still love it to this day, because I was trying to prove my blackness. I didn't think that, I had both parents. Right. I didn't come from the projects. Right. I don't have these rough and tough stories at that time, at least. And which shouldn't be synonymous to blackness. Like poverty, growing up in the hood, having only one parent shouldn't be synonymous to blackness. I just had to put that out there. I was going to push even further with that anyway to say that. And so, I'm glad you said it. I was going to go that route and say that. Right. But even my vernacular of how I speak,
You don't sound black, what they say, right?
I think that's not big of a deal now, but
Right.
then it was.
Yeah.
And so that forced me to think that I had to speak a certain way. So I would listen to a lot of East Coast rap.
Right.
And I started doing my dialect the way that I would hear a Jay-Z or a Cameron or a lot of those rappers to do, just to say that, hey.
Code switching in like reverse.
Correct. And then that also goes to a further piece, which was I was afraid to be Southern. Especially when I hear the word somebody say y'all country, I'm gonna say the word y'all country niggas.
Right.
This is how it is, and it was like, no, I'm not country. I'm from a urban area.
Right. City country.
I'm Southern, and
Right.
so yeah, the blackness of Southern and all that. But I think when I went to grad school, it helped me out is because I had a professor named Dr. Victor Anderson, and he wrote a book called Beyond Ontological Blackness. And his point is that there's not necessarily this essence of blackness that means that there's this limitation of blackness. And for a lot of people, they thought blackness could only be a successful blackness could only be like the Cosby Show, right? But there were other people that were like, no, there was a success in my blackness, but it may not have looked like that Cosby Road.
Right.
And so started studying the comedy of Dave Chappelle while also in grad school, and reading a lot of philosophy really pushed me to the point of if black people are there that understand their experience of struggle, but yet want to keep pushing and prevailing, that's what blackness is. So that's why you can see like a Tiger Woods, even though, I want the brother to acknowledge that he is black.
Right.
That he's in golf. We love that. To see Venus and Serena Williams in tennis, they're black.
Right.
And you're seeing black folks start pushing beyond boundaries and starting to do all these things we didn't think black people could do.
Right.
Only eat fried chicken, hot sauce, and all these different things. And the reality is that's black too.
Right.
But this is also black because my experience allows it to be black.
Right.
Anything I think black people put themselves in, our vibe's gonna be there.
And blackness is not a monolith, right?
Yeah.
We have different black experiences, and I wanna push it this far, because this is where I think many of us run into a wall of figure out how to struggle with. Getting into politics, right? It's already kind of adversary blackness in politics and politicians in general, right? It's already contentious relationship there. And so I think when most of us see black people in politics, we already like, how black are they? Or are they conforming? Or what are they giving up to be in these spaces? Because we know, like, hey, in these spaces, they tend to even if you don't want to, make you conform to be something that you're not.
Yeah.
Right? So how have you been able to remain yourself in that politic arena? Or did you struggle at first trying to make sure, like, hey, I'm remaining arrogant, I'm not capitulating or perpetuating black harm in this political arena?
I never struggled with who I was and why I came there. My number one definition for why I got into politics was always going to be North Nashville, period. For the black people and the black success and the black history of North Nashville is the main reason I was in that I was in the mayor's office. That never changed for me. However, what did change was that anger that I had, and that righteous anger for justice that pushed me to politics was questioned by folks that at first clapped their hands and congratulated me for being in the office to say that there would be change. Now kind of say, you know what? You're not on our side no more, which was interesting to me. That Nashville has this motto for some reason that if you're not doing the same mode of work that I'm doing, that means that you are a traitor to the race. Instead of other models like maybe say a Chicago, where the community organizer is going to talk to the person that's in the office, it's also going to talk to the janitor, it's going to talk to the secretary, because we know if we have all that intel and that information, it helps us to have a better case for why we can get change done within government. And so for me, that started bothering me, that people that were my friends, and I want to talk to them and say, hey, tell me what I need to know so that I can push it on the inside. Right. And what I started realizing is now they're afraid to talk to me. What's that about? And I think it's because they thought that I had a loyalty to the way of politics and not a loyalty of why I came into politics for the first place. Right. And then you also have to mesh that with being in a work environment where sometimes your blackness is only tokenization. They want you to stand on a pedestal. They want you to be on a nice chair and say, hey. Did
you feel that working in the mayor's office?
We'll come back to that. Let me finish this thought real quick. where they put you on a pedestal and they'll make you think that, hey, you should be happy that you're here,
Right.
but not necessarily put you into the strategy or the work or understand your skills of that work. So now you kind of feel very weak on that end. And then pushing to the other side where you see the people that are really making power moves and are listened to. And at the same time, you struggle with that because it's like, I kind of came in this office to fight that.
Right.
But I'm also seeing that this office likes that.
Right.
So how do I deal with all these different complexities that's going on and still be a Southern black man and feel that I'm being real to myself, being real to the cause, and understanding the pressure that comes from that? So let's go back to your question. Did I feel like that? I think that I had good supervisors that tried to help me not feel that, but it just wasn't successful enough. So I had a great supervisor in Courtney Pogue, our Economic Community Development Director, 25 years of experience of economic development. First thing he told me is that all the economic development, only 3% of black folks are in this industry. Only 3% of Latino and Latina folks are in this industry. And so we're already a minority
Super
in that
minority.
super minority. So
Right.
they're already up in the game. And so he always wanted to make sure that I understood principles, that I understood how these things happen. So I felt protected with him. Now, I'm also saying that with a office that was only two of us, he had maybe $150,000 budget.
Right.
Compared to when he came from Dallas, had a $9 million budget, $100 million economic development funds, 36 employees that was under him. And he was able to do his work. But how are you able to do your work when the reality is you might have only got hired because of the color of your skin to appease a certain group of people,
Right.
while at the same time the real work is being done in other closed doors and not also involving you. I had a good director, Fada Massimo, who's a white woman, but she served in two majority black towns,
Right.
Birmingham, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia. And so she had a different perspective. She made sure to always want to be inclusive, think about equity. But again, where's the budget to be able to do the work?
Right.
And so what you feel like sometimes being in politics is with a limited amount of resources that they will give to you to do the big work where they don't give you enough people or resources to make that work happen.
Right.
At the same time of people wondering why things are not getting done fast and being mad at you and maybe seeing you as the enemy, the reality is, was I really just hired here to do a job, or was I really hired here to look a certain way for somebody else?
Well, because you know that's as black folks, that's what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna say, okay, Eric is now in the mayor's office. We're gonna clap, and now we really expecting things to get done. Are we talking about economic development too in North Nashville and the Bottle area? Oh, okay, cool. All right, so if the mayor says this is gonna happen, we already know who we looking to. Like, okay, you know, it didn't happen. So Eric, what's going on? All right, okay, he says, all right, okay, it's just one thing. All right, the mayor says, okay, we're gonna do this and plan this and get the community involved. It don't happen. Eric, you know what's going? Are you going? Can you talk to the mayor for us? What can you give us that feedback? Why is that not? Because you're our connection, right? That we feel like we have a way in, or at least an ear in, even if we're not on any type of official community organization or sitting on any committees. Like, Eric is our way in, and so how did you navigate that in response to those things, even being that staff, but also that community member?
Yeah.
How did you mitigate those two kind of like unique but also different kind of positions?
I mean, we come from a people that made $1 out of 15 cents. We
Right.
always found ways to get things done, and I think that's
Right.
the same type of mentality that I had to bring to the office. And we had a lot of great workers, and still have a lot of great workers who are inside the office that have to always find creative ways and avenues to get things done. And the reality is that you're not going to get 100% of it done.
Right.
But I'm very happy if I get 85% of it done. So to talk about $20 million from ARP dollars, American Rescue Plan dollars, to be able to be used for small business development in Nashville and underserved communities, and 2.5 is automatically in North Nashville. is a win. Now, it's not the biggest win because we know we have a $2 billion budget when it comes to the city of Nashville.
Right.
But it's $2.5 million more that we can use to a lot of black businesses that did not get PPP funding during COVID.
Right.
So I'm happy about those wins. Participatory budgeting, $2 million. Now, it's controversial to talk about participatory budgeting because I think in other areas it's done differently, right? And it can also look like you're only using that participatory money for things that should have been fixed in the first place, right? Especially when other things are being discussed and talked about. But I think what is very important within that is that I think this idea of participatory budgeting had been talked about for years by people that were going into the office, and this was their push. Did it go the way that we wanted it to go 100%? No.
Right.
Things change. But at least what I'll say is that I was still happy to be a part of the $2 million, and that it was a pilot project, but it's still going, right?
Right.
So I think for me is that I can't always run the ball for 100 yards.
Right.
But if I can get a first down, I'm going to get the first down so that I can get set up for the next 10 yards.
Right. Working in the mayor's office, and just for like clarification, so people who may not know that you was a North Nashville Economic and Community Development Manager.
Yeah.
So people know, have that at the top of their mind. You're no longer in that role.
Yeah, I resigned.
You resigned from that role. When did you start to think and see like, okay, maybe I need to start thinking about other alternatives to do this work outside of the mayor's office?
Yeah. I was thinking about that probably the summer of probably around the end of last year.
Okay.
And there's a reason why. There's a few reasons. One is that I'm divorced now.
Okay.
That divorce happened during COVID. Two is that I had 2 stints in the hospital, where one, my liver shut down on me, found out I had high blood pressure and diabetes. And all this happened while not catching COVID. And I was not drinking at that time. I was actually told if I would have drank during that time, I may not be here. Also, have heart surgery. Had this thing in my heart where my heart would beat rapidly because blood would get trapped in one of the ventricles and just go circular. And so I had to get heart surgery.
Wow.
For this, man. And so that pressure, along with the pressure of divorce, along with the stress of always thinking, how can I make North Nashville better? My brain does not turn off.
Right.
So, some people might say, well, go on vacation. Well, guess what? I'm on vacation thinking about how do I make North Nashville better?
Right.
When it's just one of me, maybe 2 of us, but one of me
right.
In that office. And so it got to a point of saying, if I'm not getting the resources or the office is not getting the resources it needs, if real economic development work is not actually happening in our office, but it's happening somewhere else, if I know that every time we keep saying that workforce development, small business development, how do we talk about procurement? All these different ways to really talk about how do black folks get jobs? How do black folks have ways to make their community thrive? And instead, we see a project like a interstate cap get thrown instead of actually saying what are the issues first before the cap, instead of putting the cap to say that's going to solve the issues when it might actually create more issues. You get to a point of saying, you know what? I have to start thinking about my own health.
Right.
And I think the reason I stayed the longest in that office is because I was so afraid to lose health care, which is the real truth, is that I was afraid to lose health care because I didn't know that if I quit that job and if I don't have a job, am I going to be able to take care of all these ailments that I just discussed and talked about? And then it finally just got to a head that I can't wait no more. So I got to resign. I was looking for jobs, still looking for jobs, but it's also brought me to a point of, if I care about North Nashville, if I care about my health, and if I need to heal, I need to heal in places that allow me to heal. And the reality was, mayor's office was not a place for me to heal.
I'm going to just assume, and let me know if I'm incorrect, that some of these issues that you have brought up around economics, really supporting and diving deep into North Nashville, have the proper community dialogue, transparency, that you broached this with Mayor Cooper. I'm going to assume so. And if you did, what was those conversations like? Did you feel like your voice was heard, wholly, partially? What was those conversations like, possibly in the mayor's office?
I think the mayor can speak for himself, so I don't want to
Yeah.
bring anything on light of that. What I will say within the conversation is that when you are doing your job and you're consistently working and you keep bumping your head and bumping your head, bumping your head, I was told that insanity is really doing something the same way, expecting a different result.
Right.
You just have to realize that I have to find a different way to create this to happen. And so for
Right.
me, I just realized it has to be done outside of this particular administration.
Right.
So I had to leave.
Do you believe that that the work that needs to be done and can be done in North Nashville, do you believe that at some point it can happen within the mayor's office effectively and efficiently?
I think that we have to talk about a complexity of things.
Okay.
One is that we have redistricting that happened in the state of Tennessee. Why that's important is for a few reasons. One is that those redistricting lines happen where black and brown communities were at. It was to splinter those votes. When we talk about it, we see that Nashville has been split into 3 different areas, which makes it more conservative. So the first thing that I will say is that with our Congress District 5 now being splintered into 5, 6, and 7, it could be a possibility that all of those districts become Republican in Nashville, which now means that where do the resources of federal dollars actually hit when it comes to our city of Nashville? Are those federal dollars actually going to come into our area?
Right.
That's the first thing. The second thing is that we have a state that is dominated by Republican politicians that are also very anti-Nashville. And I think their reasoning behind that will be that the rural areas or areas outside of Nashville and also a Memphis Shelby County area doesn't get the same love as a Nashville or Memphis would get because we're urban areas.
Right.
Not realizing that Nashville is the economic driver of the whole state. Right. And so now you have to deal with state law that a lot of times has preempted us, and you know this from your work already, preempts us from a lot of things that we do on a city level.
Yep.
Now let's talk about the local level, which is, can a mayor, can a council do what it needs to do when, one, we have the 3rd largest council in the nation with only 2 people as their support staff. I make that because in Memphis, where they have a lesser number of council members than we have here in Nashville, each council member has 2 staffers with them, right? So what does that mean as far as reading certain policies and getting that done on top of maybe many of them having jobs, right? Though this is a strong mayor government, what does that mean when a mayor might try to implement certain policies and it gets preempted by the state, or council does this and gets implemented by the state? I say that because I think it's way deeper than just saying the city. It's that we have to look at the state and federal and how all this combines to really affect a lot of black lives and brown lives as well.
Right.
And so that's the way I probably answer that question.
Yeah, no, and it makes sense. And I don't think a lot of people, unless you've done this work, know about the preemption. Either if the council or the mayor wants to do something, the state says no, it's not going to happen. And so, and that's that's out of his or her hands.
But to go deeper on your question, can things get done in the mayor's office? I think we're going to have to stop looking at things as one piece and look at the whole picture.
Okay.
And I think a lot of times, and a great example would be Georgia right now. Georgia worked at least 10 to 15 years to even put themselves in a situation to now have 2 Democratic senators.
Right.
And now they might actually have the opportunity with a Stacey Abrams running again for governor, for her to actually be governor. Now you're turning a state blue.
Right.
Nashville, the state of Tennessee, that might be 20 years from now.
Right.
So again, there are some possibilities that can happen in Nashville, but we're going to have to start looking at maybe also the state of Tennessee.
Right.
And we're going to have to look at the larger state of our nation as well.
Right.
And combine that to, if power happens on the local level, that kind of sounds like a lie now, when the reality is that the state is actually telling local what to do.
Right.
So
yeah,
I want to have hope, but at the same time, I want us to be realistic.
So there's in I know that because I know I would have struggled with it personally, and that's why in a lot of ways I think it is beneficial in many ways for people, black folks in general, specifically that do this work. It's great to be attached to organizations because of capacity, resources, but having and probably needing to build your own thing simultaneously, I would advocate for that too. And the reason I say that is because this double consciousness thing that that we have to have, and this is and I want to pose this as a question to you. We understand policing in the city. We understand the policing in this nation. We understand how we're targeted as black people, as the black community, and people of color are just targeted in disparities when it comes to policing. How difficult is it for a person like yourself that was working in the mayor's office when you have a mayor that is advocating for license plates readers and more police funding? Is that something that you say, okay, well, hey, because he's representing the mayor's office, which includes you.
Got you.
Did you figure out a way to separate kind of your thought, your ideology on how you feel about those particular things? Or was that something that was frowned upon? Was that a struggle for you at times in that position?
I never struggle with my blackness and what it means to have to deal with what police brutality looks like. As a person that's been beat up by cops, that's been hit by batons, that's had their car searched on numerous times, that's been put on the ground, that literally had a cop put their pistol on my back and say, if you move, I'm gonna shoot the shit out of you. I don't forget those experiences, and I take them experiences with me all the time into the mayor's office, regardless. My answer to this question is, I'm going to always think the way that I think.
Right.
I'm going to always play my role. My role that I think that I did is that I wanted to make sure the community's voice was heard. In my district of District 21 of North Nashville, the voice that spoke the most in that community said that they wanted more cops. They wanted LPRs, which is really interesting, right, at this time. And I think what I'm trying to harp on is that where I have to go in my community is I want to know what their voices are saying. It's not to say that there's a different voice in that community that's saying we don't want cops.
Right.
It's that I'm in a community that the louder voices are saying that they do want cops, and they are loud.
Right.
And they're not actually saying that they want cops, if we're going to be honest. Right. What they're saying is, I want to go home and be safe.
They want safety, yeah.
They're not actually really saying that they want more cops. What they are saying is there's a harm that's happened to me, not only with police brutality, there's also a harm in my community where we're not actually talking about what safety is. And because we're not dealing with the other struggles in our city of food access in North Nashville, right, or there are drug addictions in our area, incarcerated, or people that have left that were incarcerated, right, that are having struggles of getting jobs. Mental health, because those issues are not taken care of. Now there's a safety issue that right, somebody might bust into my house, might try to rob my stuff because we haven't dealt with those issues.
Right.
To where now, not only am I facing police brutality, I'm also facing harm within the community. Now, right, how do we deal with that? And that's a conversation that's never really always discussed all the time.
Right.
So again, safety is the number one thing, and we haven't found a great answer yet in Nashville to say what it is. We know that there's organizations, NOAA right, has said what that looks like for them. In the mayor's office, I think we talked about mental health and what that means to have a mental health advocate paired up with a police officer to get that done. I would love to see the data and the results to that. For me, as a person that lives in North Nashville, that loves my area, doesn't really want to leave, and right, I don't plan on leaving. I'm a homeowner in my area. I know what gunshots sound like on a regular right, basis, but right, I also understand being pulled over in your own area of town because somebody says that they were doing a check because right, a tail light's out.
Right.
For me, at the end of the day, is I want my community to be safe.
Right.
And so I'm always going to be with what my community says.
Right.
In that point, they said that they wanted LPRs, they wanted more police. I have my thoughts on what the safety looked like while we're saying all these different things, but the right, reality is that that's what they want. That's what I'm for.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's been proven like nationwide too, that more people actually want more police, and I think it's because I don't think people know what safety looks like without police, fully.
It's a
And I,
great question, great answer.
I think that's more of why they're saying, yeah, we want police, because that's the only thing that has really been given to us when it comes to safety, and that's why we're starting to see, I think, police just in every fraction of our life when it comes to public safety, because we just don't know
Yeah.
many community members just don't know of other alternatives, and then those other alternatives, they have to go through pilot programs, and we have to see the data, which takes a good 2 years to get significant data, right? And so but we'll see though.
And well, let's talk about something else on the cop side, which is, we know through data that if a police officer has a college education, a lot of the infractions that happen upon them are actually less. So why are we not talking about education within the police force? I also have to be honest with myself that my favorite uncle is a retired cop. Many of his friends were friends of mine that protected me and loved me.
Right.
That was cop. Even my former wife, her family was full of cops. They were military people as well. In their minds, they think of security and safety. Now, for them, that means this over force of cease and desist. I get it, right?
Right.
But for me, I love them. I respect them.
Right.
And so for me is that if I don't want harm to them and I don't want harm to my community, how do we start talking about those different issues that we just brought up? Because we also ain't talked about mental health of the police as well.
Right.
How do we start thinking about education? How do we start thinking about these policies that are put in place to do things? Because when I look at least overseas,
Right.
many of the problems that we have in America are not necessarily the same problems over there either.
No.
But we're not necessarily looking into those techniques that are being used over there and bringing them here either.
Yeah, and they have different social
Yeah.
constructs, and
Yeah.
as a person, I was able to live in Costa Rica, live in China, live in Paraguay, and just socially they don't, they put it like this: racism is outside of maybe like South Africa, like that black and white stuff is just, it hits different here, right?
Yeah,
it's entrenched.
very much so.
It's just entrenched
Yeah.
in the mud here, literally,
Yes, it is.
right?
Yes.
And so they're like, I'm not to say that it's not colorism and things like that. It just is levels, right? And their policing is different, right?
Yeah.
They're not even, their police don't even have guns, don't have
Yes.
weapons, right?
Yeah.
And with that, like, their citizens don't have the right to bear arms either. So, it's a lot of things that go into that.
You said something that really just popped in my head. With all this too is also land acknowledgement,
Right.
which is a big piece. I just came back from Montgomery, Alabama, where we looked at Brian Stevenson's Legacy Museum and the lynching sites, man, and to know what used to be in a lot of these places. And then I just left Phyllis Hildreth. We went on a walk and was talking, and she showed me what's now the art center that used to be the pool in Centennial Park, and the history behind
the pool that
pool.
we wouldn't allow to swim in.
Correct. And also how history is painted to tell a certain story that excludes a lot of things that have to do with black bodies and brown bodies, and even our Native American bodies,
Right.
To the point that we have rewritten history and we've remodeled a certain part of land to look a certain way that still only entertains and also benefits a certain group of people,
Right.
on the blood, where you kind of got into the
Right.
mud that's seeped into the ground.
Yeah.
Of things that's happening, man. It's crazy right now. So to even get back to policing, safety, crime, we still have to go back in history to talk about it. For us in North Nashville, and you know this already, an interstate system went through that. It actually splintered the community, man. And so there's a lot that we have to deal with that we're not dealing with.
And so I want to talk about two things, and I want to keep the interstate the second thing.
Yeah.
But the first thing I want to talk about is I want to ask you, because being in the mayor's office, you had to, you're around a lot of smart people, thought-provoking, creative people. So, man, I'm interested. You started there in 2019.
2019, yeah.
2019. What did you take away? Because I know it can be easy for a lot of people to say, "Oh, Eric is left," to focus on like why you left, right? But I also want to make sure we cover like, hey, what did you learn from the mayor's office? What did you learn about Nashville? How did you learn to, about some other ways and methods and strategies to make sure that, you're being the best person to serve Nashville and specifically North Nashville in various ways?
I learned in that office a lot of great things, man. I'm definitely very happy and excited and honored that I got to work for the city of Nashville. One of the first lessons that came to me is that North Nashville is too strong and resilient. To see that tornado come through our area and to
Coupled
watch
with a pandemic.
A pandemic that was on the way
Wait,
6 days later.
Yeah.
Right. To see that strength of people, electricity being knocked out and houses being demolished, and seeing people come together and really help out. No refrigeration because there's no electricity that happens for days. Right. North Nashville is resilient. That was the first thing. Two was I understood my own skills and power. I was still a novice in understanding the political system, the local government system of what departments that I go. But one thing with black folks is that when we're usually okay when it comes to harm happening probably because of trauma.
Right,
but it's trained us in a manner that when bad things happen, we are already prepared to know how to deal with it. So it's not this big shock to us all the time of when these things happen. It's more of we have to do something about it now because it's just the way that we've always operated. So I understood the government system based on that tornado happening. I got to meet people. Right. Relationships is a number one key that happens with that. The second thing that I learned very quickly is that it's not Eric Brown from the mayor's office. It's Eric Brown, and stay with Eric Brown. I thought in a lot of ways that I've always had to connect myself to different organizations to be seen as valuable and important, when the reality was the value was always within me.
Right.
And so it's great to have a mayor's office. It's different if you don't do nothing with it. So to have resources, the little resources that was there, to have those resources, you better do something with them.
Right.
Nobody's holding your hand into using these resources to help out your community. You better find a way to use that. I found out within myself how valuable I was. I also found out very quickly that I love being black wherever I'm at. And so in that mayor's office, I never, even though I had to struggle, I never felt I had to turn off my blackness. I realized that it was a superpower within that office because there's things they don't know about the experience of what I go through. They don't know certain people to talk to. Right. I also learned very quickly that I had way more context than I thought I did when I was in the mayor's office. There's people that I reached out to that I should not know, right. that are pretty high in the power game of Nashville. Right. But I knew them and I could connect with them. I could find avenues to get in somebody's office and talk to them about things to get their support. When Courtney first got here, it was easy to get Courtney connected into the Nashville system, not only with black folk, right. but with everybody, because I was able to build those relationships. The transportation with the community engagement, I learned very quickly that we have to listen to the residents. Right. We have to talk to our communities and ask them what we want. And we have to put them in situations where they're able to talk to each other and that a conversation can be heard, because it's bad to just have a conversation where we're screaming at each other instead of having a conversation to say, you know what? That person is responding that way because of the history that has happened to them in their community. Right. And these are the things that they want to get out of that. And so for me, those are just a portion of things that came out. But the last part that came out for me is that I knew I was going to be way better when I got out. And what I mean more by that is I held on for so long because I'm loyal. Somebody hit me up, Simone Boyd. She said, thank you for staying as long as you did in the mayor's office. And the reason she said that is because she said, I know that you was only doing that for North Nashville. And it actually brought tears to my eyes. Wow. Because I am a loyalist. Wow. Jerome, if me and you are somewhere and you might have done some wrong, but you my homie, and we go out and somebody's ready to fight us, I'm going to get my ass beat with you. Right.
We ain't losing, though. We ain't going to lose, first off. Let's make it. We ain't losing. Now, we whooping some ass together. We ain't taking no ass whoopings.
Yeah. But I'll say this, though. We going to have a talk later, right? But I'm loyal to you. And that's what my loyalty has been. But what I've learned over these past year and a half or 2 years, between the divorce, between my health, and between the stresses of this job, sometimes you got to let go, because that's where your freedom's at. Right. And that's the number one thing that I think that I'm holding on to right now, is that it's painful to sometimes gain your freedom. Right. I have my freedom right now. I don't know what I'm gonna do next. Wow.
That's deep to say, man. To say that you have your freedom, and people gonna say, well, you wasn't free before.
I'm going to say, I think that's a great question, but what I'm going to say is that sometimes we think there's certain things we have to hold on to think that is freedom. And the reality is when you lighten your load, that's where the real freedom's at. And sometimes the lightening of your load might mean a failed marriage. It might mean not having the money that you used to have, or having to lose or having to let go of some of that money within your savings account to do what you had, or to realize that people that you want to stay in your life can no longer be in your life. You got to let it go. And it sucks and it hurts and you got to deal with your grief. But I tell you, man, it's so much healing and power and understanding that you let go of things to really earn that freedom.
Man, you mentioned something about listening to community. And I was reading just some of the stuff that's already out. Yeah. Specifically when it comes to the Jefferson Street cap. Yeah. Do you feel like the community was listened to during that process? And I know it's still ongoing while you was in the mayor's office, or do you feel like the mayor's office kind of dropped the ball on a lot of things on that?
Mayor's office dropped the ball. I will also say that there was people in the mayor's office that were continually given a story and they were left unheard that could have actually helped with this. I think if we want to do an interstate cap project right, first, there has to be more resources that's used for community engagement, and it can't be only the people that's in the mayor's office. Right. It actually needs to be people that are really community engagement specialists, and a lot of them to really make sure that we understand. Now, I know that there's been a fight sometimes of we know what the community wants. We've heard it forever. Yes, that's true. But it would be a disservice to us if we don't really go out there to find out. And to do that community service sometimes might actually mean, are you feeding people when you go to the community engagement stuff? Sometimes you might actually realize that this is work and people should be compensated for their work. Right. It might mean that they have kids. Are we giving daycare assistance while they're over here working with us to figure out what this community engagement? Are we actually making sure their kids are protected so that's a less stress that they have to think about to do this work? Right. That wasn't done. There was no resources to do that. Second, you cannot put the cart before the horse. So if you're going to talk about an interstate system, you need, interstate cap. Let's deal with the issues first. There were people that were in the office that continually said and gave examples of things that happened in other cities of this happened. This was a fight for three times. This happened in this particular city. It was not accomplished until one, you listened to the leaders of the community that talked to the people in the community. Two, you dealt with the issues that need to be dealt with and actually alleviate those issues first. And then three, then talk about the interstate cap project to where that actually enhances the success of what's already been dealt with. Right. If those things were done, I think we could have had a different story, because the interstate cap actually can bring a lot of great things. It can bring jobs. It can help out business owners to get procurement. It could have been a great example for once. If you're talking about the harm of what that interstate system did, we can now talk about, let's use the R word, reparations, in the sense of saying we're going to allow the people in this community to be the ones that build this interstate cap so that they can define what their community looks like, on top of the fact it's an investment in their community. Right. And now we're talking about quality of life in that community. Right. I don't think with the system that we have in place right now, it's going to be allowed to do that. Right. Because this has to be a federal, state, and local project that works together hand in hand. So yeah, it can be successful, yes, and the community in North Nashville could have been successful. You could have hired local hire, could have been great, but we know that's been preempted.
This is a common theme that I'm hearing while we had this conversation. Is like money, right? Resources. Just wasn't enough money, enough funds put into the engagement piece to be able to get things done right. Is it more so wasn't enough money, or just the proper money just wasn't allocated to in the right kind of column on the finance sheet?
I think Fata Massimo did the best that she could with what she had. And she is a true mother in the sense of mothers are going to always find a way to do with what they have to get things done. And she tried her best to do that. And I believe that 100%. But we brought in somebody like a Courtney Pogue that should have also been at the forefront of that project as well, because he saw this happen. He knows how to do this. And I don't think he was utilized enough. Resources, I think we are in an environment in Nashville where we keep hearing physical conservatism. And for me, that's way different than what I think that actually means for a lot of folks. For a lot of folks, that means let's just hold on to all our money and just do basic necessities. But we still get to define what we're saying is essential to that particular person instead of saying what's good, where fiscal responsibility for me and physical conservatism means that if we're talking about, for me at least, giving out corporate welfare, giving out money that helps out these things. And we keep saying it's because it's going to reignite the workforce, when the reality is it just passed the pockets of a lot of businesses that may not have no connection to us. Or we start talking about these incentives that we give to these businesses to come down here. And the reality is that they might pick up and leave because they're not there. That is, for me, where we need to start talking about fiscal conservative. It does not mean that for me when we know that homelessness is rampant, when, again, we have no food access in certain parts of North Nashville or Bordeaux. And by the way, Bordeaux has, I think, 4 food places that's supposed to be the access of food. 3 of those are gas stations, right? And so why don't we talk about those things? So for me, the real stuff that we need to deal with homelessness, food access, housing, attainable housing. We like to say affordable housing, attainable housing, and there's and even transportation of what it means to get to and from somewhere. That's where our money should be at. And I don't think we have our priorities in order.
A significant number of staff have left the mayor's office. I'm pretty sure maybe for all similar reasons or different reasons. If you was me right now and you seen that happening in the mayor's office, what would you think? Would that be a sign of something is not going right in the mayor's office, or is it a sign of like, hey, people are just moving on, letting go? The mayor's office is maybe not have a solid foundation as we thought. People are not aligned with the same ideology or what's best for Nashville. What would you think about that?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it differently because I'm not you, but I'm going to answer it because I'm me. I'm going to give you 2 sides of that. I can't speak for the ones that have left.
Right.
They have their own reasons of why they left. I told you my answer of why I left, right? I will also answer that I had great leadership with the two supervisors that I had, which was Fada Masimone, which was Courtney Pogue. They gave me some of the best knowledge, and I think that I did not let them down. At least I hope I didn't let them down in the work ethic that I had. I think that they saw that, and I also believe the community saw my work ethic. So I think that also counts within itself. That's what I call great leadership, and I think people always stay with great leadership when, 1, they know there's a vision. 2, that they know that their leader is always going to be there with them. 3 is that there's going to be some form of showing you how to get things done or reconfiguring to get things done. And those 2 great people were great examples of what leadership means for me.
So I'm going to ask you an even more straight and blunt question. Is our mayor a great leader for the city of Nashville?
I think the people got to decide that. I can't answer that for anybody else. I think the people have to decide that for themselves, and I think
I'm asking you though. I'm speaking for Eric Brown. Does Eric Brown believe Mayor Cooper is a good leader? Yes or no?
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that question. What I would definitely say though is that that Nashville deserves the leadership it needs, and I think their voting power should prove the leadership that they deserve and that what they need. For me, again, I'll just go back to the further questions that you asked, which is I had to heal. I had to deal with myself. I have to let go. Gotcha. And so for me, I had to leave that office and find different ways to do that.
Speaking of different ways, now you're gone. You have the freedom. You let some stuff go. Currently not working for any organization or any employer right now. What's next for you?
It's a great question, man. I'm going to keep the same thought. I still want to make sure that North Nashville is an international model of what a community should look like with black leadership. I still mean that, even with all the things that we're seeing happening in North Nashville, gentrification, displacement, businesses moving in that might essentially wipe out a lot of history in North Nashville. I still, I guess, kind of like the old Christians and the old mothers, still just have faith, baby. I still have faith.
Yeah.
And that's the faith that I'm going to keep for that to happen. And so that means that I want to find ways to make that happen. Other answer, go ahead.
I'm going to say kind of just because I know you're passionate, I know you've done the work.
Yeah.
Just always interested in hearing what are some of those ways that community, right, could be a part of in making Nashville and North Nashville more specifically better, healthier, more equitable, more economically vibrant.
Number one thing is that if you're looking for a house, and I know that we're in a market of where it is a seller's market right now. If you have the funds and you are a brother and sister that really cares about the history of North Nashville, I need you to move back. I want to take the Marcus Garvey approach. Come back to that area. We're seeing great business people that are putting their business here because they love the rich history of North Nashville, and I'm loving that. So when you see your Slim and Huskies, what Clint Demo and EJ are doing, I love that, to see them put Slim and Huskies and put E.G. Mack there. I'm loving when I see Black Rob put his entertainment stuff out there. I really appreciate that, brother. Charlotte just put a coffee shop / event space on Jefferson Street, which I really love. Just like how E.G. Mack is on Jefferson Street, we're having more black folks come back to the community because they know that history and want to do it. So I think for me is that if you really want your area to be there, we're going to have to find ways, one, to buy houses. Two, if we want to see the businesses that we want, can we pull our money together to do that? If we can't pull our money together, can we find people that do care about that and bring them in the community to do those different things? And I mean black folk when I say that. Three is to really support the business that we already have there too. Don't wait till somebody dies and then support their business for a week or two. One thing that I pride myself on is that majority of the time, I'm gonna say about at least 85 to 90% of the time, I'm going to eat at a small business. I'm not going to have a Starbucks. I'm sorry. I'm not going to get a lot of franchise food. I'm going to go, and I know it might be cheaper for some people, but for me, I know the people that I'm buying my supplies or merchandise from, and I know I want to support them because they can keep on supporting my community, and so I got to support them back. I think those are different ways that we're able to do that. You had a first part of that. Oh, what am I doing next?
What's next with Eric Brown?
So I'm trying to decipher. The first thing is that Eric Brown's trying to get rest. I'm trying to rest. I'm not talking about sleep. I'm talking about where my mind has been able to let go of the traumas, the stresses, the insecurities, and I'm finding that right now. And it's been beautiful. That's the first thing. The second thing is to let my community love on me, and that's something that's always been hard for me to do. And my community is saying, "You ain't got no choice. We're going to love you, Eric. And you're going to be okay with that."
Let me stop you there too, because I like giving people their flowers in front of them, especially black man to black man. So I'm gonna give your flowers right now. Working in the mayor's office as a black man is already an accomplishment in itself, and being able to see, being in meetings with you, seeing the boots on the ground work that you've been able to do. I know we talking about specifically North Nashville, but I'm gonna say Middle Tennessee, right? Because that's what the mayor's office represents. And so, man, thank you for that work. Thank you for that representation. Thank you for that voice. Thank you for being an ear for many of us that maybe didn't have an ear in the mayor's office or know what was kind of going on from the Facebook posts, tweets, and all those. I want to give you flowers now. And you brought up something that I think is very crucial that we all need to understand. It's okay if we're not building in the same way for the same purpose. That's okay. That don't mean what you're doing is wrong or any better than what I'm doing and vice versa. The fact that you're trying to do something intentionally good and make our community healthier, that's all that should matter. And when we can come together, we can come together.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to give you flowers and say that right there.
No, and I got to say it back to you and give you your flowers, because what I appreciate about you, Jerome, is that you would reach out to me because you knew I was in the mayor's office, and you would try to find out things that would also help out the community too. So that's the way that I think that this should work, is that we're talking to each other to make sure that at the end of the day, the people are taken care of. Back to
what's next?
I'm trying to decipher what that work looks like for North Nashville. Does that look like maybe an economic development fund, which gets into a lot of things, and I really think a fund needs to happen.
People know if my main primary thing for black folks in the United States is black economic power.
Yes.
I think that's where everything should start and stop at. That's just my preference. Because I think that economic base gets you into all these other. whether it's politics, education, housing, it is literally being able to do for yourself and create the things that possibly that your city government, state or federal government are not doing that they should be doing.
Correct. And there's a lot of great resources for that. And so when I say it, now let me make sure to give shout out to 37208 Fund, because they're doing their thing right now. And I really appreciate, I think I'm talking about a different fund when I say that as far as economics. So I don't want to step on their toes because they're doing great work within that. But I want to get it to the point of when I'm seeing like Crenshaw, California, they have a thing called Destination Crenshaw, where they're actually talking about the history, but they're just bringing it back into the 21st century to get things done. But they're not leaving their history. They know where they came from, and they're just trying to see it in a different way that still keeps it black. And so I'm loving that with Destination Crenshaw. I was reading a group called Center for Community Investment in D.C., where they're doing this thing called capital consumption, where it should be, which is what I think should happen, partnership between private and the public worlds, bringing them together to invest into a community of folks that are already there to make them successful. So that's one piece. I'm trying to decide if I still want to stay in politics, man, and what that actually looks like. I don't want to run. So, before that gets asked, I do not want to run.
Hey, man, look, we got early voting is already for judicial elections now. But next year, 2023, council, the mayor, it's a lot of seats that's up, man.
Yeah, I don't want one of them. I will help somebody else get into one of those seats.
Right.
But I'm trying to figure out what that looks like for me in politics. And then the last thing for me is how do I rebrand myself, man? I'm gonna be honest with you, man. One thing my pastor told me very quickly, Reverend Tex Thomas, says you can't serve poor folk being poor yourself.
Right.
Some people might have a issue with that, but I understood what he meant, which was how do we find ways to get that black economic power so that other people, once we get into the door, how do we make sure to keep shifting that back so that we can get our folks on too. And so I'm thinking about what that rebranding looks like, to where I'm not only seen as the community organizer or the community advocate. I'm looked at as the person that really is talking about economics and is showing it by doing it, and has the resources, or put myself in a place to get the resources, but to make sure that everybody eats mentality is happening.
Right. Yeah, no, man, I think, I'm sure, man, that there are going to be many opportunities for you to do whatever you want to do on your own time as well, and be completely yourself. And so, man, I'm looking forward to it, man. Before we get up out of here, though, man, I know you got this book. And I thought I had to make you go back out to the car and get it, man. So let's talk about that a little bit, man. And where can people tell us a little bit about the book, and kind of where can people find the book?
Yeah, man. So I think one thing about the book is that what was interesting to me is that this actually happened once I got out the hospital from the liver shutting down. And I said two things were going to happen. One was that I was going to first work out, and so I got my health back, and so I lost about 75 pounds. The second thing that I was going to do was finish my book. My book is kind of like my mixtape, is how I look at it. It's a children's book for adults. Okay. And so you'll see like pictures and pages in the book. I did this on purpose.
I love
it. But I start talking about different issues about black male vulnerability, a black man from being from the South. I talk about faith. I talk about a lot of the issues that are happening in our community. And sometimes I just have very weird thoughts that I put out. And so for me, it's a mixtape of my personal life experiences in my first book. And I'm very happy that it happened at a time that I should have gave up. Or let me say it differently, that many people would have given up. I kept going, and then not only that, I said I'm gonna make a product out of the pain. And so this is one of the products that came out of that. Weekend Reflections, which started with me just writing Facebook posts about reflections that happened over the weekend, but it's turned into something that's way bigger than that now.
What can people grab the book?
So there's a few places that you can actually get the book. One is you can get it from Amazon and all those different places, or I actually have a website, Weekend Reflections, that I can give to you to pass out. Okay. Where you can actually just buy the book straight from me. Okay. I'm still doing it like the old
CDs in the trunk.
Yeah, in the trunk.
You'll pull up on us.
Put it like that. You can also buy that Energy on Buchanan Street, Naila Burnett. her Juice and Yoga spot. She has the books there.
Okay.
But yeah, please go get the book. It's one of the first. I think it's not gonna be my last book, but it's definitely gonna be my first book.
Right.
That starts the spark to a lot of other things that's gonna happen. And so I did something, man. This is the book, man. But I wanted to make sure you had a copy, so I signed it.
Oh
and,
man,
gave you a copy
I
of the book as
appreciate
well,
that,
man.
Eric, man.
Yeah.
Oh snap, got a signed book. Hey man. Sometimes, people, you know what I'm saying, come through Deep Dish and really, you know what I'm saying, take care of your boy.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that,
No
man.
doubt, no doubt.
This is amazing, man. Eric Brown, man, I appreciate you.
Likewise.
Before I get you up out of here, man, is there anything, man, we didn't talk about, or you didn't get a chance to really get off your chest about anything, man, that you would like the people, the listeners, and the viewers to just know, man?
Yeah, man, I think the biggest thing that's happened for me these past 3 years since COVID and the tornado has happened is the power of vulnerability. I don't like that word as a cliche. I mean that very seriously, that I've literally had to strip away a lot of things about myself that's helped me grow. Mm-hmm. I've had to lose a lot of people. I've had to almost lose my life a few times to let go of things that were very toxic in my life, to go there. But that only happened because of the support of a community that allowed me to be weak around them. And just show the tears, show the pain, and they were still there to take care of me. To be around more black men, and I'm gonna say specifically black men, that are now able to talk to each other like real people, and not the bravado to make us feel like we're strong. That, and then also taking that vulnerability wherever I go. I notice the more that I am vulnerable and allow myself to be seen, I am seen. And it helps other people to see themselves. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that I'm still growing. I'm still learning about vulnerability and what that means for myself. But I know ultimately I want to keep on growing. I want to keep healing, because there's going to be generations behind us. You got a young seed yourself. And we don't want them to have those same type of traumas that we have to where we had to survive. We want them to thrive. And so the power of vulnerability is a big thing for me right now, and I want to keep going with it.
Eric, man, I appreciate your time. How can people reach out to you? Because I'm sure, man, it's going to be people like, hey, you got too much knowledge, too much expertise in this economic development, community development world, man. So if people wanted to bring you on as a consultant, get your ideas, strategies, well, how can people reach out to you and just jog your mind? You know, so potentially for a fee. Hey, we black economic power now. I
believe in value. I believe in value. The first way, I'm off of social media right now, but I am still on LinkedIn. So you can look for Eric E. Brown Jr. on LinkedIn. When I do get back on Facebook, Instagram, I still have Eric E. Brown Jr. You can reach out to me on Instagram on that, and it's also the same thing on Facebook as well, Eric E. Brown Jr. My email is mr.eric.e.brown@gmail.com. Feel free to always email me. And if that don't work, if you got Jerome's cell phone, hit him up. He'll give you my information
for
too.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, for sure. Eric, man, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for just opening up to us and giving us some gems as well. And just thank you for your time availability, man. I really appreciate you coming through.
I think this. I'm still loving Symphony doing her stuff. Shout out to Symphony.
Shout out to sis.
I always love this. She's always been great people. So just for what you're doing, because I think you are changing the community with these conversations. With bringing a different vibe, and so I thank you for that.
Man, thank you, man. Next time we're gonna bring you back, man.
Yeah,
for sure. Because there's always something to talk about, especially out north.
Yeah.
All right.
Always.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.